So this time, we are going to be doing something that we don't do often. We're going to be watching good movies that we like on purpose. So we are going to be watching every single X-Men movie. Well, not every single one, because frankly, I watched Deadpool and Deadpool 2 once, and once was enough. And The New Mutants is like barely a movie. We will be watching X-Men, X2, X-Men United, X-Men The Last Stand, X-Men Origins Wolverine, X-Men First Class, The Wolverine, X-Men Days of Future Past, X-Men Apocalypse, Logan, and X-Men Dark Phoenix. And of course, I assembled my very own X-Men composed of the strongest, most willful mutants in my life.
My history with the X-Men films is not existent. I had sex in high school.
My history with the X-Men, well, I've watched the movies. It's been a while since I've watched the movies.
What I'm really curious about is seeing how the franchise feels when you watch it all in one straight line, because it went through so many behind the scenes changes and franchise altering decisions and reboots and remakes, and the continuity is all over the place and makes no goddamn sense at all. I'm curious to see if there is more cohesion to be found if you just watch the whole series in one go. And what better place to start than where the movie did all start? What? My main takeaway from this is it was surprisingly pretty good. I expected it to be very dated, which it is in many ways. Like most movies that were made in 2000, things have changed a bit.
I'm Charles Xavier. Would you like some breakfast?
The story of X-Men is basically we meet a bunch of mutants and they all end up at Charles Xavier's school for gifted youngsters, which at this point I think everyone, if you're watching this video, you know what that is. And they all have to team up and work together against Magneto, who is an evil mutant who wants to turn a bunch of people into mutants because they want to pass a law making mutants have to register and, you know, forcing more, the metaphor isn't subtle, is the point.
Where's Henry?
Mr. Gyrich has been dead for some time, Senator. But I've had Mystique here keep you company.
I love Magneto in this movie. He may be my favorite villain, frankly, in any movie now. I love villains who are having so much fun being villains, and everything from the cape to the lair to the giant machine that's gonna turn everyone into mutants. It's just so campy and weird, but it works so well, and Ian McKellen is so dedicated to selling it like it's Shakespeare, and frankly, it works.
The war is still coming, Charles, and I intend to fight it.
Ultimately, it's a movie about two bitter old exes. They say old friend at the end, but it's pretty clear that, like, they were f***ing.
I really, really, really liked this movie. It was better than I remembered. I really liked that instead of having, like, quips, they would just occasionally roast each other really hard.
What do they call you? Wheels?
I feel like superhero movies have changed so much, and we forget the basics. Villain in a lair. He has henchmen who are slightly better at fighting than the heroes until they aren't.
There's a very sharp delineation between the heroes and the villains, where the villains are all kind of monsters and the heroes are just very hot people. I feel like there could have been a little, I mean, Mystique is pretty hot, let's be fair, but still kind of a monster lady. I feel like if there was anything missing, it would have been maybe making one of the X-Men not just like a model. It feels like mutation is talked about as this thing that like you have to deal with, and all the X-Men, like, they're fine. The tone is always pretty well balanced between grounded, heavy quotation marks on grounded. But what I like about it is it does take itself fairly seriously, but still embraces the sillier aspects of the comics and the characters, and I think that is the best way to do it. If you went full goofy with this, I don't think audiences, especially in 2000, would have been able to get into it as much. Overall, it strikes a really good balance. It functions. It functions really, really well, and for the start of a new series, I think this does pretty much everything right.
No, it was just really, really good, and Hugh Jackman was giving it his all, and I loved that because now all he does is sing, and on principle, I hate every theater kid.
Hey, it's me.
Prove it.
You're a dick.
I honestly don't have that much to say about this movie because I just think everything is good enough. Story is fun, action is fun. The effects mostly hold up. There are a few shots, especially one shot that is noticeably CGI, but a lot of the stuff was done practically. You know, seeing Wolverine run around the halls of the X-Mansion, I love the design of the Cerebro hallway. I've always loved that, even when I was a kid.
It sure is a big round room.
A very big, very round room.
It certainly is a big round room.
This was good. I enjoyed this a lot. It still holds up. Just wish someone else had directed it.
It has bad CGI. It has Frogman. It has it all.
Like the first one, I found myself mostly surprised at how much I liked it. I think I liked it more than the first one a little bit, although they are very close in quality. I like that there is a very consistent vision between 1 and 2, and I think 2 builds on the ideas of 1 in the best ways possible.
Don't lecture me about war. This already is a war.
So the story of X2 is the X-Men are back, and this time humans are mad at them because Nightcrawler almost kills the president, and it turns out there's an evil military guy, and he was behind Wolverine, and honestly, recounting the plot makes it sound much more boring than it was. I always find it kind of harder to talk about movies you like and just like. What struck me about this one the most is really just how small scale it is.
So at the top of my notes, I have Ronnie sucks in big bold letters because Ronnie. Iceman's brother just narcs them for no reason. The whole family, from dad to mom to sibling, were all just like mutants bad. And I feel like it could have been more interesting than that.
Have you tried not being a mutant?
That one shot of the family in the window, and then they're like, Ronnie's in the middle, and the mom's like holding him like, wow, Ronnie, like you're so strong for doing that. It's like, no, lynch him.
Can't sleep?
New legislation.
How can you tell?
Similar to the Mutant Registration Act.
Because you're awake.
I really liked that weird kid with the glasses who watched TV. I really liked him anytime he did anything in his little baggy pants. I was like, you go, kid. I'd die for you. I didn't care much for Girlverine. I didn't care much for most of the new characters.
Kurt Wagner, known in the Munich circus as the Amazing Nightcrawler.
But in the Munich circus, I was known as the Incredible Nightcrawler.
Yeah, save it.
He appeared in this movie. He opened up the movie with like the White House attack. So he was in this movie to save the day for Storm because she was not a character in the first movie, and she only existed in this movie to be like, wow, Nightcrawler, you're cool. The plastic jail was there. It was pretty cool. And then Mystique stabbed the fat guy with the iron. That was pretty neato. And then he was like...
Too much iron in your blood.
I like the first half of this movie when all of that cool was happening. And then they go to Alkali Lake. And then the movie sucks.
Yeah.
So...
Really?
Yeah,
I agree.
As soon as they go to Alkali Lake for like the final battle, even though it's like half the movie, it felt like maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was just like slow. Like there are some okay parts in there, but overall, it's just like this weird dream sequence where the guy's trying to get the other wheelchair guy with the heterochromia.
All of them.
All of them.
All of the mutants.
All the mutants?
Everywhere.
There is one particular scene in this movie, Ross will insert clips, wherein Jean Grey comes into Wolverine's tent and starts kissing on him. And he's like, great. Then he sees a scar, which alludes to, he goes, oh no, it's not Jean Grey, it's Mystique. And he's like, no, thank you. And Mystique cycles through like 4 different hot girls. Is like, I can do any of these. And she's like, I genuinely just want to right now. Like Mystique, it was a wild thing. This would never happen in a Marvel movie.
Oh God,
today,
no.
Where she comes in and she's like, no ulterior motive. I just need to get laid so badly. And Wolverine is like, no. That's crazy talk. Like, here she is. She's like, I can be the girl you're obsessed with and can't have. What else are you going to be doing tonight that's so important? And I was just sort of like, frankly, I was enraged. Like, I was like genuinely appalled that they chose to include such a horny scene and then have it go nowhere.
What do you really want?
I want you to get out.
The only point I can come back to is that in every regard, I just liked how it built on the first movie. I just think it's a really good sequel in every way. Not an amazing movie, but a really, really good sequel to X-Men. They definitely were not shy about just escalating Magneto's just over-the-top drama, his flair.
We love what you've done with your hair.
It's as good as the first movie and slightly better in most cases. And I wish we had gotten one more movie like this, rather than, This doesn't really have the reputation, I would say, of being the worst one, but in contrast with how the first two were received, I would say its reputation is definitely lesser. I don't think this is overall that much worse than X-Men and X-Men 2. It's worse for sure, but more so just because it's such a dramatic shift in tone, style, dialogue, characterization, pretty much everything. It's honestly kind of just like a sequel to a movie we didn't watch.
What did they call you?
Juggernauts.
I can't imagine why.
You can let me out of here. I need a pee.
The story of X-Men: The Last Stand is that Jean is back, but uh-oh, she evil, and also there's a cure for mutants. I think my biggest issue with this movie is that it's notably much more cartoonish than the last two. I think when this movie is focusing in on the characters, it's relatively interesting, but once it gets into the big action set pieces and it feels like a lot of it is just being driven by CGI, especially the Jean Grey house sequence and the final battle when everything's turning into dust and it's just pixels. It's just pixels everywhere. Nothing's going on that makes any sense.
It was not good. This trilogy is like split literally right down the middle. Halfway through the second movie is the turning point where it becomes not good anymore.
It's kind of a mess. It's a really, really messy story because what you have is two plot lines that could carry a movie in and of themselves, sort of mushed together and fighting for screen time. I think Mutant Cure is enough for one movie, and Dark Phoenix is enough for one movie. And honestly, I don't even like the Mutant Cure idea that much because I like the idea that the mutants are stuck like this and forced to fight for equal rights and trying to assimilate with no other option. I don't know, it seems like it sucks the fun out of any sort of metaphor or social commentary they were going for.
Kill me before I kill someone else.
Don't say that.
Please.
I have a natural bias against stories where it's a hero and they're evil and it's just because they're crazy. It feels very lazy to me, and I feel like there was more you could have done. It feels like the less interesting version of a story that could have worked. And I think if Cyclops was allowed to stay around for more of the movie and wasn't killed off in the first 10 minutes, you could have more interesting emotional ideas going on. It feels very rushed in a way the first two didn't. The first two feel a lot more deliberate and focused, and this was more just a bunch of mutants doing a bunch of mutant stuff and hoping that spectacle could make up for a lack of actual story and characters.
So you want to control me?
No, he does. No.
The Xavier Magneto romance was very clear. I believe the subtext was very clear in this one. I think it's really cool in this movie that the main villain and the main sort of like, I don't know, moral figurehead or whatever are actually best friends and clearly never want to actually hurt each other. Like at no point during all three movies did I think Magneto was going to hurt Charles or vice versa.
I'm one of them.
All the arcs wrap up in a way that feels satisfying. Like Magneto being cured instead of killed feels very poetic for his character. Logan sort of making the decision to be a part of the team. It just feels kind of limp though. Like it's like these are the moments you expect to see in the third movie, and based on how the story was building, I can see why they arrived at the character conclusions that they did. I don't know, like Magneto can move the chess piece at the end, so who cares? The funniest moment for me was that Magneto immediately committed to dressing like a curmudgeonly old man and dropped the capes and purple as soon as he was cured. Like he embraced the Homo sapiens experience, and I love that for him.
You know who you're talking to?
Do you?
We meet a lot of new mutants, none of which are particularly interesting. You've got Juggernaut in a weird rubber muscle suit. You've got Porcupine Man, my favorite.
You have claps real loud.
Yeah, you got Mrs. Claps. You got the clap the color. Angel is in the movie.
Rogue is just like, I'm gonna have the cure. That's her whole thing. Cyclops dies. Okay, Mystique is cool, and then she's not a mutant anymore. And Shadowcat is like, oh my god, I miss the snow. I wonder if this snow guy can be my new boyfriend and we can go skating. Jean is like not Jean anymore, and the new Jean has no personality whatsoever after the one scene where she wanted to have sex and then got turned down.
Jean, who is Jean this time, not Mystique, shows up. And she's like back from the dead. He hasn't seen her in a while. She's single now because she killed her boyfriend. And she's like, look, now I'm a demon version of myself who only wants to and or kill. And she's like raring to go. He's like, oh my God, I miss you so much. Let's do this. And then she gets like slightly too into it. And he's like, wait a second. I don't want to have sex with you because now you're like evil Jean. Way better in my opinion. She was like literally breaking skin, scratching his back. And I was like, dude, this is the point of supernatural healing powers.
Is that the point?
It's a definite bonus. Once again, why is he refusing to the evil chicks? They're ready, they're willing. They're way hotter than the good. Well, Storm's the hottest, but she's also the worst.
They can't cure us because there's nothing to cure. Nothing's wrong with you.
The movie is just kind of unremarkable. I wouldn't say it's like actively offensive if you like the story and characters. It doesn't bastardize anything too badly. It just kind of wastes good opportunities. This one feels like it was intended only to be a big blockbuster superhero movie, and there was no other ideas behind that. It exists to make money. It feels very mandated by studio as opposed to what might be an interesting story, and it sucks. It's not very good.
I'm gonna get a lot of but I kind of like this movie. One of us didn't do a film degree, and it's me, so I'm allowed to have bad opinions. I thought, well, I didn't like certain things. I thought the CGI was so stupid. I thought the bone claws were so stupid, and the ending is really, really bad.
His brain may heal, but his memories won't grow back.
Everything else I kind of liked. I liked getting the like montage of them fighting all the wars. I thought that was kind of funny. I liked that they gave him a brother. I wish that he didn't like crawl around like a cat and it's gross. And they didn't explain why Sabretooth never acknowledges that he knows Wolverine again. A little bit weird, but maybe somewhere along the line he also gets shot. That's a thing that could happen. The scenes of him in Canada, I thought that they really gave us a compelling reason for him to go and get the adamantium. I liked the guy they had playing young Stryker. I thought he was good at that. I liked that Cyclops showed up. I thought it was fun seeing angsty teen Cyclops. It was cute. If I watched it again, I'm sure I'd hate it just as much as everyone else here hates it. But for first time, I was like, it's fun. I love a prequel.
Okay, so this movie was really bad. Obviously, there's a lot of really stupid things in it, like Gambit flipping over him and breaking the bricks after he just fell like 50 stories and lived, and it's like, wow, you really saved me there, Gambit. So the movie is filled with moments like that, but I feel like those could have been redeemed if the story actually made sense.
Everything is bad. Nothing is good. The direction isn't very good. The effects are abysmal. Will.i.am is for some reason in the movie.
We hunted our own kind, Logan. There's a special place in hell for the things we did.
We learned that Wolverine is Canadian. This is important because I'm Canadian. You also learned that he is brothers with someone we have come to know, Sabretooth, and they grow up together and they fight in a lot of wars, and it shows us that they age very, very slowly. They don't explain why, but we know. They join a sort of Suicide Squad in the Vietnam War where they're supposed to do missions, but they're actually operating on imperialist American government missions, and our buddy Wolverine says no thank you, so he goes AWOL.
We can't just let you walk away.
And then he goes to live in rural Alberta. He gets a nice little girlfriend. They're very happy. He becomes a logger. And then his past catches up to him. Someone's going around killing all the other members of the Suicide Squad. And it turns out it's Victor, his estranged brother. So then he has to deal with that. And he's very, very sad because Victor kills his girlfriend. Not for real. And so then he goes and gets his crazy skeleton so he can beat Victor in combat because he's the big brother and so he's always winning. And then he gets the skeleton. Turns out it was all an elaborate ruse, but he gets his revenge. And then it ends with his memory wiped through the stupidest means possible.
I don't get why they didn't try to define Wolverine's character as any different than how he is in the original 3 X-Men movies. Because he's functionally the same person in all of these movies. You assume that maybe there's something up going on in Wolverine's past that he's running away from, or something really bad he did. But whenever you see these sequences of him and the soldiers going through these towns and looking for adamantium or whatever, Wolverine doesn't do anything. He just stands around. It's not even really clear why he's there, besides, I guess his ability is very useful for a soldier, not being able to die.
Don't even think about it. We didn't sign up for this.
Because you have Victor there as the evil one, Wolverine has to be the good one. So he doesn't really change. He just has this, like, evil guy who's kind of like him running around. There's never any moment where he kind of reckons with the idea that maybe he's becoming like Victor, or maybe Victor influenced him more than he thought, because they constantly talk about how they're brothers, but they don't really interact in any meaningful way that informs who they are. People talk about their relationship a lot, but they don't really have any connection that's distinct beyond they both have bone protrusions and can heal.
Because I'm the best there is at what I do. What I do best isn't very nice.
You're not an animal, Logan.
He's always talking about how angry he is and how he doesn't want to give in to his instincts, but he never does. Anytime he does go to kill someone, it's fairly justified. They're either trying to kill him or have just killed people in front of him and are now going to kill him. What is his character? What?
You're not an animal.
Oh, yes, you are.
It's a series of scenes that feel like things that should be in a movie instead of a story about anything, because this is ostensibly Wolverine's origin, but you don't really learn anything about Wolverine besides he fought in a lot of wars and briefly worked for this military guy and didn't like it very much. And then he met this lady, and the lady was working for the military guy, and there was this big convoluted plan to make Deadpool, and then he cuts his head off. The whole movie is nothing. It's the illusion of story, the illusion of characterization, but it's just a very thin veneer over what is just an empty collection of scenes.
My main gripe with this movie is that Victor is bad for no reason. I think this movie could have been good if their relationship was actually like a real relationship. If Victor actually acted like a real human or had any sort of redeeming qualities, then his actions would have made more sense. But instead, Victor's just a henchman of the big bad, even though he's been like the only person who's gonna live as long as he will, and the only person he can have a connection with for like hundreds of years or whatever. But like that doesn't come out on screen. It's just like,
ooh, shiny.
when you think about it, the motivations are like poignant.
The ideas are there.
Yeah, you know, there's a lot that goes into making a movie, and there's a lot of steps along the way that you can mess up, and I feel like they messed up a lot of those steps.
In terms of being an action movie and a prequel to the X-Men movies, I think it fails on every level. Much like how X-Men 3 felt like a sequel to 2 movies we never saw, this feels like a prequel to a series of movies that were never made. On the bright side, I think it does go so far over into just being batshit insane that it's very fun to watch. Like, it's not boring. By the end, it feels like any sequence of events could have led to Wolverine losing his memory. And it was all through no choice of Wolverine's at all. I don't know, it just feels like no one gave a f*** about this movie. And on the audience side, I can certainly say that I didn't.
This is like a very standard superhero movie, very average. Like, it works. It does what you'd expect.
Gonna be honest, didn't really have strong feelings about this one way or the other. This is often cited as the best of the X-Men movies, as the sort of low-key masterpiece of all of them. I don't know if I agree with that. I think it's a pretty solid movie in the same way that the first one is. I would say as a whole, the movie is not as strong as individual pieces of it are. It's one of these movies where I just kind of fall right in the middle. Like, I have nothing extraordinarily good to say about it, nothing extraordinarily bad. There are some points that are great highs. There are no points that are really bad lows. It's all pretty good.
Eric, you're not alive.
So the story of First Class is that it's basically just the backstory of Xavier and Magneto as they team up and find the first group of mutants across America to combat the evil Sebastian Shaw, who wants to turn the whole world into a nuclear wasteland so he can make a mutant army. It's a pretty big gamble on a plan. I don't think Shaw is a particularly bad villain. I just think his plan is so apocalyptically goofy. The theory goes that the invention of the nuclear bomb in this universe is what caused the increase in mutation in humans and led to the rise of mutants. So Shaw's plan is to start World War III and through the fallout of nuclear war, create an army of mutants. But he still has to live in like a nuclear wasteland, right?
I like when comic book movies go a little bit smaller, and I know it ends with nuclear war, but I think at the basis of this story was a very, very nice friendship and like taking characters we really cared about and fleshing them out a little bit.
You should be Professor X, and you should be Magneto.
My one thing that I will say about this movie, and this applies to all of the X-Men movies for sure, and most superhero movies in general, is the side characters are really lame. All of the X-Men they bring in for these movies for one-off have stupid powers, or even if they have cool powers, they don't really have a character. Like Emma Frost, what's her character? She's just like... Hot. Yeah. Angel, I had no idea what she was doing. I liked the Banshee. I thought he was fun, but that's just because that actor always has kind of a chaotic thing going on.
Havoc, Angel, the guy who adapted to every situation to survive was ironically the first one to die. Those were all like whatevers. They just like fill out the team. But yeah, I wasn't a big fan of Mystique either. Her whole thing was like mutant and proud, and every time they said that I was just like
Mutant and proud.
That should be obvious. That's like your whole thing.
It's all fine. It's a good movie. It's fun. It's cute. It's a good new direction to take the franchise in, especially it's a significant tonal shift from the first movie, even though they both open in Auschwitz. You know, this movie has such a distinct voice and character and so much more charm and personality. I mean, of all of these, this may be the first one I would describe as actually fun.
All right, look, we're not going to make you do anything you don't feel
Here, let me
comfortable
help.
with, all right?
Eric!
Oh, one of my favorite things about this movie is Michael Fassbender's accent choice. I think is incredible.
Choices.
Many choices were made.
Let's just say I'm Frankenstein's monster.
Like in the start of the movie, Michael Fassbender is doing an accent that's a little weird, but you're like, I don't know, he's foreign, which makes sense because to my knowledge, Magneto was born in Germany and then raised around and about. And when he's old, he has an English accent because he's played by Sir Ian McKellen.
I don't know how you survived living in such hardship.
Once you get further through the movie, you reach the end, which I believe they shot first, wherein Magneto just has an Irish accent. He's not doing anything else.
The real enemy is out there. I feel their guns moving on the water.
I can feel their guns in the
I can
water.
feel their guns in the water.
United in their fear of the unknown. The Neanderthal is running scared, my fellow mutants!
As an X-Men movie, it wouldn't be one of those without a fair number of like really silly things that happened. And a good example of that is Hank running and he looks like really dumb as he's just like 8 times speed, like zooming.
I don't want to feel like a freak all the time. I just want to look
normal.
Yeah.
Once again, Mystique, who you may remember as the girl who was willing to do whatever Wolverine was down to because she was very lonely, something that some of us can relate to. Anyway, she tries it again with a little weird nerd boy, and he rejects her flat out.
My feet, in your natural blue form, will never be deemed beautiful.
And he's so upset about his feet. That actually always rubbed me the wrong way. He's like, well, I'm such a freak because I have like weird feet. Wear socks. Find a girl with a fetish. There's a million options here. Oh yeah, and then she tries to sleep with Magneto, which, girl, barking up the wrong tree.
This is a surprise.
The nice kind?
Get out, Raven.
They do try to convince us over and over again that Eric and Charles are attracted to women, and I'm not falling for it. The only woman that Charles actually kisses, it's purely to erase her mind.
They have a whole movie, which is them like lounging on beds together, having emotional talks where they like grab each other's faces, like having breakthroughs, talking about how much they love each other and how he's like, I want you by my side for my whole life. And then immediately after that, Charles is in a wheelchair, and now he's suddenly like a lame-o in a... I meant like he's a loser. That was an incredible poor choice of words given the situation.
I can't feel my legs.
And he is just there with his little girlfriend, like, oh, yes, suddenly we're together and I feel very strongly for you. And it's like, no, your head was just in your boyfriend's lap and you had some realizations you weren't happy about. So now you're trying to get him out of your system because he's become a potentially genocidal maniac. You can fix him. You can fix him. You can fix him.
Day 2, here we are, X-Men Day 2. My allergies have been just horrendous this morning, so if I look and sound like complete shit today, that's why.
Ross, no one's buying it. We all know you're emotional after watching The Wolverine.
The Wolverine made me cry so much. The Wolverine is the story of the Wolverine, I guess. Logan's back. It's after Last Stand. We're back in the original timeline, sort of vaguely, and then he's reminded of that time he was at Nagasaki when it was bombed. That time. So he goes to Japan to meet up with the guy he saved at Nagasaki, who offers him a chance at mortality and wants to take his healing power away from him. And then he finds himself embroiled in a big family drama with the Yakuza and giant robot samurai. It goes off the rails a little bit at the end. My memories of this movie are that it's really, really good, and then it gets to the end, and then it's just terrible. And it turns out, in fact, I would say it's more kind of boring the whole time, and then it gets to the end and it gets really funny. As soon as you see the giant samurai robot, it's like they've walked into another movie. Especially when they reveal the old man is inside it.
It's only this armor that's kept me alive.
The thing is, if you call a movie The Wolverine, I feel like it needs to be the definitive Wolverine movie. And I don't know why this would be that, because it's very clearly a side story. It's like, he's the only character from it that comes back, really. None of the events of this movie have any lasting consequence.
No! No, Jean!
I get that he would be sad about Jean, having to kill the woman he loves and whatever, but like she was
never his girlfriend.
Yeah, that's so true.
They kissed like twice. What I'm learning by watching all these movies in a row is that I think a lot of the emotional impact and the things that I retained that I loved about these movies was mainly based on how much time passed between them. Obviously, there's a big difference between seeing like Magneto and Charles Xavier and Jean Grey 7 odd years from when we last saw them and 1 day ago we last saw them.
We built it to make me strong, so I can take what you would not give.
So let me try to recount Mr. Yoshida's plan, because there's sort of 2 plans going on that are fighting against each other, so it's kind of confusing, but not really. Old man Yoshida brings Wolverine to Japan to say, I can take away your immortality and give it to me. Old man Yoshida dies. And then at his funeral, the Yakuza attack and try to take his granddaughter. So we find out later that this was arranged by the granddaughter's fiance and her father because old man Yoshida left his company to the granddaughter and not to his son. But actually, it turns out old man Yoshida, along with his Viper mutant friend / henchman, kind of? Oncologist. He was actually just building a giant samurai robot suit so he could lure Wolverine to this mountain base and then cut off his claws and drill into his bones. Somehow that takes his power. I guess the healing is stored in the bone marrow. They say that they know how to steal mutations, so presumably they've done it before and it's in the bones.
The plot for me got really convoluted. I didn't really understand everyone's motivations. I feel like we're missing key moments, or at least more explanation of what's going on, so that we can have the big dumb samurai at the end, which was just awful. I knew this movie was bad. I knew I was right and Ross was wrong.
It's true. You got me there.
This isn't the worst X-Men movie I've seen in the past day. I'm sure it won't be the worst X-Men movie I'm going to see today.
What are you?
A chemist. Nihilist.
There's one line that I found very funny because it proved they did not one person on the script had like ever taken a science course past high school. But there was just one line where Viper goes,
I have a certain talent for combining biochemistry and metaphysics.
which sounded cool if you never took Philosophy 100 and learned that metaphysics is not really a science at all. She's like, I took several organic chemistry courses, and then I thought really hard about why and how we exist in the world. What is our place within it? Do I think? Do I am?
A mutation?
I mean, having seen Logan now, this feels almost kind of prototypical to what James Mangold wanted to do with this character, because a lot of this movie does smack of studio notes. The fact that the whole story builds up to Wolverine has to fight a giant robot adamantium samurai with giant glowing red swords. It just doesn't really feel like it fits with the rest of the story that we've been watching. Overall, I just found it kind of unremarkable. It was a movie that very much worked at the time, I think, just to see a more functional Wolverine movie.
Oh, that's nice.
One of my major gripes with the superhero genre is that the romances are always bad and they keep putting them in. I never gave one shit about Jean Grey. I don't care. The second movie when she dies, I was like, good. The third movie when she dies again, I'm like, let's hope this one sticks. So the romances suck. In this one, it has one that sucks a little more than usual, not just because they lack chemistry and the storyline, like it kind of comes out of nowhere, but because there is the major caveat that he was friends with her grandpa. If one of my friends had a granddaughter, I wouldn't meet her at like a family reunion and be like, I'm sensing chemistry. I'm sensing metaphysics between us. There is one truly good romance in the history of superhero movies. And that is Charles and Magneto. And we get them back, baby. And it's the best scene in cinematic history, not just in X-Men.
What do you want?
There are dark forces, Wolverine.
I know that is not how Charles would go about that, but Magneto, I feel like he's like, if we're gonna team up, we're doing it my way. So Logan's going through, I'm gonna do a little magnet stuff just before he sees me. So he's like, wait, what about Magneto doesn't have powers, but I do have powers. So he's like, what's going on? The keys are shaking. I know who this is. He turns around. It's me. Sure enough. Powerful again. And then I'm like, well, the humans are going to exterminate us. And he goes, you say that all the time. And I go, no. I know you won't listen to me, which makes it a bold choice. We led with me, but we need to build. We need to pique his interest and then convince him. So he's like, no, I know you won't listen to me. But you know who you will listen to? Then you have to freeze everyone, Charles. So you got to freeze everyone because he knows you do that. He thinks you're dead. So we want maximum impact here. So you're going to freeze everyone. And then you're going to come out and you're going to do a little slither up. You can't make a direct line. You got to kind of sashay. You don't have legs, so you're going to have to work with this. But yeah, so you come up and then he's going to say something along the lines of, you're dead. I saw you disintegrate before me. And you're going to have a little snappy. I'm thinking,
You're not the only one with gifts.
and Charles is like, maybe I could just like come out and be like, hey, so I didn't die and we really need your help. He's like, no. He needs to know I'm part of the team now. And Charles is like, you know what? Fine, anything for you, baby. I can picture 2 hours of that and it's a better movie than the Wolverine. I had seen this movie once before, and when I had seen it the once before, the only X-Men movies I'd seen were the first one and First Class. So I remember thinking this movie kind of sucked because nothing made sense. Watching it now, having seen the movies that come before, it made a lot more sense. It was more coherent this time watching it, but I think I also liked it less because, I don't know, I think just watching it so soon after First Class, I like First Class so much because it's fun and you really care about the characters and you're getting to see them in a new way. And there's just something so nice about getting to see a different take on people you've grown very attached to. And this one, it wasn't a new take on any of the characters. It just didn't feel new. It didn't feel fun. It was good, but it wasn't for me, maybe.
So I wake up in my younger body, God knows where. Then what?
So in the future, after X-Men 3, somewhere down the line, robots called Sentinels have essentially taken over the Earth, wiping out all mutants. There's a very small group of mutants left, most of which we know, a few of which are just randos from the comics thrown in there because that's the X-Men movies. The plan is, because Mystique killed the creator of the robots in the past and led to this dark future, they're going to send Wolverine's consciousness back in time to his younger body so he can stop that from happening and create a new, brighter future where everyone is, you know, not dead. So a lot of this movie is just kind of time travel hijinks, having fun with intersecting the stories of the original trilogy and post First Class. I think the most interesting stuff in this movie is picking up where First Class left off. I don't even really know how to categorize this. Prequel, sequel, reboot, it's all of the above. There are a lot of balls in the air with this movie and a lot of things to juggle with this story, and it is surprisingly coherent. I don't think it's amazing, and I think maybe because there's so much going on, and most of it is kind of relying on not quite fan service, but more like you have to be very aware of the X-Men movies to even be able to understand what's going on. It feels like the culmination of everything that has happened so far, not just because we see the timelines and the actors converge, but also just in terms of the stories that have been told and all the things they bring back and the things they sort of set up and then immediately drop by Apocalypse because, well, we'll get to Apocalypse.
The main draw for me in this movie is there are a lot of cool action-y moments. That sequence where the Sun Guy and Iceman and Colossus are fighting the three different Sentinels and they absorb their different powers to win the separate fights. Stuff like that is cool.
I'm holding your neck so you don't get whiplash. What? Whiplash.
When I think of this movie, I think of the scene where he's breaking Magneto out of the prison and like moving the bullets around and having a good time. The story wasn't like too engaging for me outside of the premise.
Once again, the movie's pretty much just about Wolverine, but it's more about Wolverine and Charles's relationship and sort of inverting that, which is fun to see.
Logan, you're going to have to do for me what I once did for you. Lead me, guide me.
These movies always refer to relationships between characters that when you watch all the movies in a straight line, don't quite have the impact that they might imply later down the road. You have to read between the lines to get the real emotional resonance they're going for.
Bobby.
Hey, Storm. Hey, kid.
It's fun to see them again, even though I haven't not seen them in that long. And like I said, the movie gets most of its emotional weight from the idea of you haven't seen these actors in these roles in about 10 years. This movie hit a lot harder when it came out, and on every subsequent rewatch, I've liked it less and less.
Eric?
5 minutes into the plan going well, Magneto's like, let's turn it all around. Like, he just earns Charles's trust back, and it's a very heartwarming thing. They play chess again. Were I alone watching this movie, would I have cried? Almost definitely. But it was undercut by the fact they keep trying to no homo Magneto. They keep trying to play up this Playboy thing. They're implying he and Mystique banged, and I'm like, I don't believe that for 1 second. We saw the palpable...
No one would Mystique.
That's ever
Mystique.
They told me you control metal. You know, my mom once knew a guy who could do that.
I wish they had brought in a few more side characters from the original trilogy to like do stuff, but you know, they're pressed for time, so a lot of stuff just kind of gets skimmed over. A lot of characters are just kind of there to be there and fight, mostly in the future. I think the past stuff is much more interesting because the future is basically just one long battle sequence they keep cutting back to. Overall, this is a pretty fun movie. I think it only really works in the context of like a marathon. I can't imagine that I would rewatch this movie on its own. I would at least want to watch First Class again or one of the originals first, something like that. I'm surprised the fan service didn't feel more just empty and look at all the things from X-Men. They actually do give a lot of the character moments and story callbacks a meaning. The X-Men franchise to me is more about finding the little gems in this big sea of chaos. If the X-Men movies did anything from beginning to end, it was swing for the fences and see what happened. Terrible. Just awful. I hate this movie. I hate it so much.
From the ashes of their world, we'll build a better one!
The story of X-Men Apocalypse is Apocalypse is a bad guy and he wants to blow up the world because he wants to be in charge instead of humans. The X-Men have to stop him. I just don't like anything in this movie. I don't like a moment. I don't like a scene. I don't like a line. I hate it all. Nothing about it seems like it was particularly well thought out or like anyone really cared. This is one of the ones that feels like they made it out of obligation because the last one did well and we might as well make some more money off this. It didn't really seem like anyone wanted to be there. The young cast, I think the issue was more that they were just bad actors.
I just heard you in my head.
I'm telepathic. I read minds.
Well, stay out of mine.
What makes a good story? Well, you have characters who make interesting decisions. No characters in this movie seemingly have motivations, and the ones that do don't make choices based on those motivations. Let's go over Storm, my favorite character. Do we know Storm's motivation? No. Do we know Apocalypse's motivation? Kind of.
Rule the world?
Kind of. Do we know Apocalypse's motivation for having Storm become his first of his 4 horsemen? He only gets 4, you know. No, she's just the first mutant that he saw. And the choices that characters do make seem out of nowhere and make no sense. Like, why does Maximoff not tell Magneto that he's his son?
I'm here for my family too.
Does he know? I feel like the actor doesn't even know. I feel like he asked, and I feel like he wasn't told. Why?
He's my father.
What?
The only thing you really learn about the X-Men story as a whole is where Scott and Jean Grey and Storm came from, all of which are not interesting answers, and how Charles Xavier became bald, which for some reason was something that needed a magical motivation. I can't believe that a major plot point of the movie is just how Xavier gets bald, and it's not just he goes bald. Just make him go bald because he gets older. Sometimes it happens when you're 20.
Well, at least we can all agree the third one's always the worst.
After Days of Future Past, they had a completely clean slate. They could have done whatever they wanted. And what they wanted to do, apparently, was take all the wrong lessons from Marvel movies and just make it big and dumb and loud and the end of the world. And I guess, in a sense, I get it because I assume they wanted to end the trilogy on the biggest note possible. It just feels too big for X-Men. They tried to one-up the Quicksilver scene from the last movie, and I think failed because, once again, it's too big. It's just too much. I'm assuming that because of how well Days of Future Past did, they were basically given carte blanche to do whatever they wanted, and sometimes limitations are good.
What do we say we take this blue guy on a little field trip? I'm sure there's a mall around here somewhere.
What's a mall?
Honestly, the Nightcrawler in this movie was pretty good. Kurt Wagner was well cast in this movie. He provided some well-needed comic relief from the rest of this dumpster fire of a film.
So I'm not going to say too much about this movie because, frankly, there wasn't very much I cared about. I basically zoned out within the first 15 minutes, and here's why. I have come to love Magneto. I've come to feel he is an important part of my life. I have a new favorite character. I have a new favorite role model. And I knew something was wrong because he was wearing a hard hat and flannel. And I was like, oh, no, this is the kind of thing he wore when they took his powers in the other one. And then he goes to work at a steel factory? Magneto, who couldn't even come say hi to someone without doing an elaborate coin trick beforehand? Magneto, who has all his dramatic conversation over games of chess. You're telling me he's in rural Poland working in a factory with no complaints. I'm like, they're massacring my boy. And then we go to his home and I'm like, no, it can't be. But it is. Magneto has a wife. The disrespect to Charles' memory. But Magneto having a wife and child and giving up all of his principles, giving up his entire life's purpose. We've seen he's willing to throw friends to the wayside. He dropped Mystique like a bad habit immediately when she was not helpful to the cause. He's willing to betray friends time and time again. He's willing to have millions of people die if it reaches the end goal. He does not give a single about anyone, with the exception you could argue of Charles. And no, they say he gives it all up so he can have a little family. Magneto's motivation is set. Magneto was in Auschwitz. Like, we don't actually need to add to that. It's just so f***ing stupid. Again, yeah, it's like, oh, it's very sad his daughter died. First of all, we just met her, so I didn't give a f*** when that kid got shot, in the stupidest way possible, might I add. We didn't need more motivation for Magneto. He's lost enough. Literally the second that wife walked out on screen and I saw them kiss and I realized what they were trying to do, I was like, this movie's done for me. And luckily the rest of the movie lived down to that auspicious start because it all sucked.
There's nothing here. There is not a single interesting choice that is made, and there's no emotion behind that inch of of makeup put on a poor Oscar Isaac's face.
What are you doing?
Mystique showed up to say, I don't like humans, and then turns basically on a dime to just being the team leader at the end. I think they worked backwards from the ending, honestly. They had an idea of where they wanted this movie to end, where they wanted the characters to be, and then they went, I guess we should put Wolverine in there too, because it's an X-Men movie. I guess we should make Magneto evil, so he needs a new motivation.
Is this what you want from me?
Usually these movies, even like I've said, even if the story isn't good, you can fall back on, well, there's cool superheroes doing action-y stuff. And here, even the action isn't even that good. You really felt the CGI mush.
For the last 20 minutes, they're just clearly on a soundstage the whole time. They thought of a few cool shots for each character, and that's about all the characters did. Everything in this movie just feels like, is this the best idea they could come up with? It feels like a first draft in a lot of ways. It feels like there's some ideas here that could work, maybe someday, if someone else wrote this and directed it, but we don't live in that world. And here we are in hell. I love this movie. I adore this movie. I have loved it more every time I've seen it, and this time was no exception.
We took you in. I gave you a family.
They're gone now.
So Logan is the story of Logan. It is the year 2029, sometime in some timeline, who knows, who cares, it doesn't matter. Wolverine has grown old and his healing factor is no longer working as well as it used to, and he finds himself on a quest to reunite a young girl named Laura who has mysterious mutant powers with a group of mutants who are on the run from the Transitive Company. Okay, we were close. We almost had it. I would say this is the polar opposite of Apocalypse in that there is nothing in this movie I dislike. I like every choice. I like every shot. I like every scene. I like every landscape. I like every prop.
I had seen Logan once before, and again, it hadn't really hit me because I hadn't seen the rest of these. And watching everything beforehand really did. I realized why Logan is so good. Because I watched it before, and everyone had told me it was one of the best comic book movies ever. And I kind of didn't really get it. I was like, it was a good movie, but it didn't really hit. Watching it with the context of, God, I guess now like over a decade's worth of movies we've been watching. But it was just really, really lovely, and the fact he died protecting a new generation after all this time taking care of Charles. And while he was never going to be Professor X, he was sort of his own generation's version of that, and that he like gave these kids a safe haven and protected them. And I thought that was really lovely.
This movie is all about undoing the mysticism of mutant powers and dealing with real human fallout, which I find fascinating. It's a very thin line between whether a comic book movie feels embarrassed of its source material and whether it's genuinely trying to engage with that material on a human level. And that's what Logan does. It wants to explore Logan as a human being and Charles Xavier and think about what would happen if we were in a future where mutants were gone and these powers were fading away. The last couple days, we have watched countless movies. Actually, not countless. 8. In all of the X-Men movies, the powers are so glorified and they are constantly reiterated as what makes these characters special. And I like the idea of engaging with those powers on the level of them being a curse, but not like the movies generally say they're a curse, like genuinely they are ruining their lives.
They're waiting for you at the Statue of Liberty.
Statue of Liberty was a long time ago, Charles, a long time.
It uses the previous X-Men franchise, not only for, cute little references and stuff like that, but things that have defined Wolverine as like a cool character in the past, like, oh, he drinks and he smokes and stuff. That's now seen as weakness. And it just shows that over time, the things that can define you can become addictions. They can become more problems than they are solutions. The ultimate point of that being the reveal that the adamantium is what's actually killing him.
I believe you knew my father on the Weapon X program.
Yeah, he's so put this poison in me.
In this series, I've realized, based on the last couple movies, that if there was a What X-Men Are You quiz, I would be Professor X, like, without question.
Yeah, probably.
We were watching the scene where they're fighting in the car, and I was like, oh, it's me and Ross, and I'm the, 90-year-old bald man, and he's the cool superhero. I'm like, how did we get in this position?
How the tables have turned.
It's like, oh my God.
There's nothing easy about you, pal. Nothing.
Yes, please be like the rest of the world, blaming someone else for your boring
I don't really get into comic book stuff anymore, but there is still something so deeply satisfying about seeing Wolverine just massacre people. Because I never expected I would be able to see that on the big screen. And that again goes back to the unique construction of the X-Men franchise where 100% you would never get a movie like this out of the MCU. I feel like every comic book movie wants to be about real human beings, and everyone always says that, but this is the first one in a long time, and especially in this franchise in a straight line, that has genuinely felt like it was about real people who deal with real human emotions and not superheroes who have to punch the bad guy.
Oh yeah, Charles, we got ourselves an X-Men fan. You do know they're all bullshit, right?
We keep talking about Logan as a comic book movie, and I wouldn't consider Logan a comic book movie.
There are comic books in it.
There are comic books in the movie. Logan definitely sits apart from the rest of the movies we've watched in this marathon because it's not tied down to the shackles of having campy superhero action sequences as its bread and butter. Those sequences exist in this movie. We have Logan taking the green juice and cutting people up. So those things are present, but they make up such a small portion of the movie. This is a movie that will make you cry, but also at the same time when Laura's berating Logan.
What? Okay, shut the f*** up!
Those moments are hilarious at the same time. So it finds these moments to lighten the mood, despite it making you feel some real that you were not expecting from a movie that is coming off of the paycheck of the X-Men series.
I cry at every movie. I once was crying so unconsolably at The Parent Trap that I was on the floor and my mom had to it was a big thing.
The Lindsay Lohan one?
Yeah. They let something so small come between their family and...
Don't start talking about it now.
I might need 1 second.
My favorite thing about this movie is the evil Wolverine. The idea of bringing in a young, pure, rage-filled Wolverine and having Logan have to literally face his past, face the worst version of himself, and ultimately he is not even able to overcome that, and Laura is.
I feel like that Wolverine is the Wolverine that they keep alluding to that he never actually was.
Exactly, yeah. It's not a subtle metaphor. It's literally he comes face to face with his dark self, but it's played so perfectly, and they don't have to say it outright.
This will help you heal. Make you stronger.
Wolverine is a character who you can't kill, who is invincible, who doesn't even know how to fight, but ends up winning every fight because there are no consequences to his actions. In this movie, there are consequences. In this movie, there are no superheroes who just have godlike abilities, and that is the draw. That is the attitude of the movie, and I feel like that's what it takes to break the shackles of the superhero movie.
Logan was really, really lovely. It was a wonderful movie. It was great to watch. After seeing all of this, it felt like a beautiful conclusion. I know Dark Phoenix is going to on all that, and I think it's sort of the best kind of comic book movie in that if you come into it as just a standalone movie, it still makes sense. It's still good. You still gain something, and it manages to make the world something that doesn't feel too silly. And I do really like R-rated superhero movies because I like when there's blood when they kill people.
I love everything. 5 stars. Favorite X-Men movie by far, I would say. Even though you do need to have some sort of familiarity with the X-Men franchise, Logan still works as a story about Logan and about these characters, especially as an ending to his story. I love this movie. And for the record, I promised Grant and Matilda that if they watched all these stupid movies with me, they would be allowed to drink alcohol during Dark Phoenix. We may have started a little early. We may have started slightly early. Dark Phoenix. Let's go. This is a joke. We're not actually drunk. Dark Phoenix is by far the worst of these movies. Basically, this movie is X-Men: The Last Stand, but what if it was worse in every single way? Which I think is a bold pitch.
We go into space, we get the astronauts, we bring them home. Any questions?
Yeah, like 1,000.
So Dark Phoenix opens up, the X-Men, they go to space, and they rescue some astronauts, and a big fiery cosmic force goes into Jean. Even though in X-Men Apocalypse, she already had Phoenix abilities, and she could turn into a big fiery bird, she also gets the Phoenix Force in this one, and then a bunch of aliens led by Jessica Chastain want the Phoenix Force too, and that's the movie.
Dark Phoenix, I'm gonna be real with you, Ross McIntyre viewers, I didn't process a lot of that movie. I was very busy not watching that movie.
I didn't, actively watch this movie.
Did any of us?
As much as I normally do. Normally I'm a very attentive viewer, but
Did you hurt someone?
Please,
answer the question, Jean.
Stop, Eric. You're making me angry.
Good.
This movie was written and directed by Simon Kinberg in his directorial debut, and you can f***ing tell this is by far the most amateurishly made of these movies. Maybe if they had hired, a director who had made movies before, this could have been something. Every dialogue scene is just shot, reverse shot, reverse shot, close up, shot, reverse shot, reverse shot, on and on and on. And you're waiting the whole movie, the whole almost 2 hours for something interesting to happen. And yet it never once does. And I kind of respect it for that.
So we're going to space.
Yes, Kurt, we are going into space.
We're doing space missions now. Cool.
This movie begins with a very dumb operation into space. The director is we need to get to space. I'm gonna speed run the scenes into space with as little setup as possible, but I don't need to shoot intro scenes or establishing shots or anything.
This movie cost $200 million.
It's not our life, Hank. It's his. What do you think the X in X-Men stands for?
Matilda, you got your wish. Mystique finally got penetrated.
And by the way, the women are always saving the men around here. You might want to think about changing the name to X-Women.
That was so clearly like a weird girl boss line thrown in for trailers where they could be like, the women are always saving your asses. Call it ex-women. Then give us more women characters who aren't f***ing Storm.
I've got your back.
Look.
End of discussion.
The bad guys consist of Jean Grey, who has the dumb Dark Phoenix powers, which are like they change the origin. So that's the one half. That's the better half. Imagine that. And then the worst half of the big bads of this movie are like monotone aliens who just have no emotion whatsoever and don't give a f.
How did you find me?
Let's just say I have friends in high places.
And then the good guys consist of Mystique, who's the shittiest X-Man who dies within 10 minutes. And then you have Hank, who's like actually the shittiest X-Men.
No, you need to face this, Charles. You need to face it. Come on, admit it to me right now. Come on, admit it.
The actual true... listen, I've said the shittiest X-Men twice already, but the real shittiest X-Men is Storm. And she is present and is still doing vaguely dumb shit during the action sequences, which still make no sense despite 10 movies. The bad guys suck, the good guys suck, and in the equation of filmmaking, this equates to the movie is not good.
There have been 10 movies that have gone by, and I still don't know what Cyclops' Jean's or Storm's personalities actually are. It's like they chose one mode for every character to play, and that's all they did. And every time they talked about the characters' internal conflicts, every time anyone talked about Charles Xavier as a character, it was completely out of line with what we've seen Charles Xavier is all about in every single one of these movies.
It's funny. I can't actually remember the last time you were the one risking something.
Get out! Get out! Get out!
This is like a kidney stone. It's painful the whole time, and once it's gone, you just want to forget about it. I'm racking my brain trying to think of ways you could improve this movie, but I think the best way would be just not make it. No one wanted this. Who wanted Dark Phoenix again? Yeah, what a bad move.
Please, Jing.
This franchise is all over the place, and it's really interesting how they go from like standard hero movie and then they like try some shit and it doesn't work, and then they try some shit and you get Logan, and then you try some shit again
and you get Dark Phoenix.
You get Dark Phoenix. Like, I don't know what franchise can boast such highs and lows. Like,
I really don't know what the X-Men brand will look like under Marvel. I presume, based on everything I've seen recently from them, bad.
I really like these movies. I'm obsessed with them. Every movie I watched I liked except Apocalypse, Rest in Hell. And I love Magneto. And everyone else die in a hole. I don't give a X-Men Day, baby.